Ni hao, hello, hola. Welcome to another podcast. Today we are joined by two very lovely ladies. We have Tanvi from Theta sorority on the University of Puget Sound and Gabriela from L.A.S.H.O, Latinos Unidos organization that is a part of campus. Hi, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. So before we start off, I just want to list off a couple facts because today we will be talking about sexism in higher education. So I looked up a couple facts about our university and how we stand on gender diversity. So I looked up, we are ranked 1,690th in male to female diversity nationwide. And our student population, according to the website I found, we are 59.8% female and 40.2% male. And our faculty look to be 57.9% female and 42.1% male. So, just some basic information about our university that I kind of looked up before we start. And now we'll just get right into the questions. What is sexism to you, or how would you define sexism?
I think I would define it as being undermined or invalidated solely because of my gender identity on this campus specifically, just throughout various roles and involvements that I have.
For me, when I think of sexism, I think of machismo and marianismo and how those two are used in Latino culture to, um, I guess, assign gender roles to us and just a way to uphold the patriarchy.
Thank you. Thank you. Now that we've kind of set like a baseline of what sexism is, I feel like one really important question, especially in like today's society where you might run into people who are sexist, I just wanted to ask you, how do you think we should stand up to those people who try to kind of set sexist ideologies on other people?
For me, I think that um, like it's interesting the way that you phrase that, because I think that we all hold sexist ideology because that is just how we were taught. And so I think that by unlearning and um, tell telling people like, okay, well, why do you think that that's that way, and when you call people out, also call them in and be like, okay, well, why is it that we think this way, and how is that harmful to people in our community?
Mine is just kind of similar. I think holding ourselves accountable and recognizing our own biases is very important. A lot of the discussions that we have surrounding calling people out and calling people in, with sexism specifically, could honestly, in my opinion, have been avoided if at a young age we were taught how to hold each other accountable and how to recognize biases within ourselves, because we become more comfortable doing it as we reach higher education or the workplace and all these other um, environments that we develop to be in as we get older. But I think for today, just a method that I use when I'm recognizing like racial bias or gender bias in myself, very similar, is to just break down why I think that. And, is it because of a stereotype? Is it because of a specific bad experience that I've had that doesn't speak to everyone in a certain marginalized group? And breaking it down until I can say, okay, well, this, judgment is completely arbitrary and doesn't really hold very much weight. And then recognizing that I can push myself and others around me to do better.
Uh, so thinking about it that way, how do you think that would look in an organization such as like a university? How could a university as a whole kind of disestablish and unlearn these sexist ideals?
I think the first way is really drawing attention to them. So whether it's, you know, making experiences like this more visible to a campus space, or anything really, having platforms for people to talk about their experiences and let it be known, that's so much more productive for me than sweeping it under the rug or pretending it doesn't happen, or pretending that you don't hold biases, because everyone does. So the more we let them be known and admit to them, the more we can commit to unlearning them, rather than just being willfully ignorant and pretending that they don't exist.
I also think that, well, I thought that like the facts that you gave us in the beginning was really interesting. How we do have more a bigger female population, but when we are talking about like diversity and stuff, we also have to talk about how are we making sure that these groups like women and other um, gendered minorities, how are they protected? And so I think that we have to not just increase our diversity, but also establish rules about protecting them and making them feel safe on campus.
So we're talking about kind of how to step against sexism, and then we've noticed how sexism has been an issue in society for a really long time. Uh, in your opinion, do you think sexism will always be kind of a problem in our society, or is there like a possible future where it just won't be an issue?
I think in an ideal world, it wouldn't be an issue, but that's probably wishful thinking, because we still have so much progress to make. And it's interesting because, similar to racism, a lot of people will only see sexism if it's very, very blatant and it's, in the form of a hate crime or something similar. And it takes a long time for people to put in the effort to see the sexist tendencies or thoughts that they have personally. So I think it I think it will always be something that we will be working towards complete um, equity for, all the genders. But I don't know how comfortable I am saying that. I see a world where it's completely eradicated, just because it takes so many forms, big, small. It's hard to say, really.
Yeah, I'm in a similar thought process where like I hope, sexism will eventually be non-existent, but I don't see it happening in our generation or the generation after that. It's going to take a long time um, to um, work towards that.
I feel like a lot of times when we like blatantly see sexism, could either be like an interpersonal interaction in a classroom, but then I also realize I want to acknowledge how sexism could be portrayed in like the media, and I wanted to kind of ask you about what do you think, or how do you think the portrayal of sexist things are portrayed in the media, and if they take them seriously or if they kind of make them light and shrug them off.
I think that we see it like all the time in media, and I think like in advertising and TV shows, movies, as well as music videos, I think that women are given only certain roles to play, and they often fulfill the stereotype of like a maternal role, taking care of the house, cooking and cleaning, as well as in um, other scenarios where their women are hypersexualized. Um, and uh, we were actually talking about this in one of my classes, and how we like, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't take these roles, because like, if you don't take the role, then you're not like pursuing like you're not pursuing your what you want to do in your life. But at the same time, if you do, you have these you're contributing to this like um idea of what a woman should be. And so I feel like women are just not like, they can't win in these situations. And so I think it's really important when we're talking about working towards ending sexism. Like, I think men have to play like a crucial role in like examining their own. Okay, so um, um, how do I have these perceptions about women, and like how can I unlearn these things as well, so that we can yeah, just like work towards ending and sexism. Yeah.
I was going to say something very similar in that in most stories and storylines where there are male protagonists and men in power and things like that, and that's a problem. The misrepresentation is the problem, and that problem of misrepresentation is coming to light, and media is, working towards putting more females in empowering roles and as empowered characters, but also the audience is, you know, having an issue with that and saying, why can't we just go back to normal where there were predominantly men in, you know, hero roles and things like that. So I think as much as the media propagates a lot of misrepresentation, the audience and the viewers are also so conditioned to thinking that only having male representation is the norm that a lot of the problem comes from there as well.
So that was awesome. I'm really glad you guys are like making it easy for me to switch questions. So talk. I know earlier you mentioned gender norms, and we're talking like normativity. So I feel like, and then there's been a lot of situations where like female actresses, artists will kind of call out the some of the reporters for like the questions they'll ask them, and there's been a huge movement on that. And I feel like that's on a bigger scale of like these very influential powerful women who are calling out these norms that have been set over time. And I just want to ask, what do you think like other people, not just artists, not just people who have huge influence, can do to try to dismantle these sort of gender norms in their communities? And then specifically for us, how can we work together? What can we do to dismantle certain gender norms that might be placed on our campus?
When I think of like what I want other people to do, when like confronting sexism, I think about like at home in my family, where like when we're for Christmas, like we're making tamales, and it's just like the woman making the tamales. I think like, I'm not gonna not make food because I want to learn those traditions, but I also think the men should take the opportunity to, come and learn that as well. I think that um, in Latino culture, there's like, that women making food for the men and them coming in. And so I think that like our generation of men should take more initiative in learning those traditions. So I think that's just like something that I've been thinking about as the holidays are coming up. And then also like on campus, I think that we should call out when we see sexism, and it happens all the time, like in class, when I'll give an example. Someone asked me if I was taking notes, and I was like, why would I be taking notes for you, you know? And I think I would have liked for someone to be like, you know, to defend me and be like, that was kind of messed up. So I think, you know, calling it out when we see it is just the biggest thing that I can think of. And it's always the little things that I think make people question their day-to-day ideologies about gender roles.
I was going to say, I think the majority of people, no matter what situation they're in, learn from the examples that they're given. So whether that's in the media or in their real life experiences, um, seeing, you know, friends and family members in TV shows and movies that do cast women in a very singular and traditional way has an effect on how they view women in society. So I think on an individual level, just being a role model and trying to set a good example for, you know, what your niece or nephew or younger sibling or, you know, even your parents can learn from you. Because I grew up in a household that really valued shared parenthood and cooking and cleaning responsibilities and things like that between my mom and dad. And I grew up thinking that was the norm, which it should be. And then coming to the University of Puget Sound and realizing that that's not how other people grew up was kind of a culture shock for me. So I think people really learn by example. And the first step is, again, recognizing behaviors in our inner circle and never knowing the kind of influence that we ourselves might have on those people.
Another thank you for sharing, both of you. Another question I wanted to ask. So we've seen how in different cultures sexism might vary, but then like we can also notice how society, like in society, there's an overall kind of theme of sexism. And I wanted to get your input on, do you think that sexism stems from a societal view or a more cultural view? Because I know at times culture can definitely influence one's actions, and then that's what changes societal tendencies. So I wanted to get your opinion if you think it stems from a cultural viewpoint or just a societal viewpoint that happened to connect differently with different cultures.
I think it's a little bit of both. I think in this kind of situation, um, unfortunately, from the limited cultural experience that I have and have from experiencing cultures different than my own, I've seen some element of preferring males or having very traditional female roles or something of that nature in all of the very few cultures that I've been exposed to. So I think in that situation, it becomes like, did the cultures learn this and adapt to it and propagate it from what they were seeing in society in general, or vice versa? So I think it's definitely a combination, and I don't think it's very easy to pinpoint it very clearly.
Yeah, I have a similar idea. Just that, you know, we see it in all societies, and I think that, you know, on a cultural level, it just looks slightly different, but it all um, has the same outcomes of, yeah.
Okay. And then I know earlier one of you mentioned like individuals and what individuals can do. And then I guess a follow-up question, it's sort of similar, but do you think that it is more like of individuals that are the problem, or is it systems that are put in place that kind of perpetrate this sexism and then make it the norm? Or is it individuals who bring it into the systems?
I think it's the systems, but it also is, you know, up to the individual to really change that because the system won't change itself. So again, a combination of both, because if there aren't enough individuals fighting back against the system, then you can't really expect the system to change.
I think that it is a systemic problem because I think that we see sexism in um, different ways. Like it changes all the time, and just because it changes doesn't mean that like um, the results are different. Um, and so yeah, I also think that it's up to the individual to unlearn and teach differently to uh, younger people. Yeah.
So talking about like systems and how sexism comes into it, I wanted to bring up. So I know our president at the time, Donald Trump, has said some very, sexist things and just very kind of degrading towards women. And his track record isn't the best with his female counterparts. So do you think putting someone in a position of power, specifically a male, or it could be either, that has a track record of kind of perpetrating these sexist acts or having these sexist ideals, uh kind of influences others to continue this normativity of sexism?
Yes, and I think it's just because it normalizes it, because even if whatever figure, and it can be like the figure of your household or your professor that you love or anything like that, just having them get away with things like that and not be held accountable for whatever derogatory remarks and actions that they have made and done in the past, tells the collective that if I do something similar, it's okay because this person did it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people excuse Donald Trump for what he has said about women and just um, saying, oh, like it's just him talking. It doesn't do anything. But when you don't respect women, when you don't respect them, like that shows in your policies. And I mean, we see it right now with his appointment of Amy Coney Barrett, I think is her name, to Supreme Court Justice, where she has actively um, disempowered women in her judgments. And so there's obviously like a relation to like how he views women and what he's gonna put into policy. And I think we can also see that in um, campus with like I don't have anyone specific in mind, but like just in general, like if you notice professors or just like anyone having these mindsets who like make jokes and stuff like that, like that's gonna also show into um, what they teach as well.
And then, so keeping up with that, I know, Gabriela, you mentioned like some people say he just talks. And I know one thing a lot of people mention, especially in the media when like they're getting interviewed. And recently I saw one of a woman who was at like a Trump rally, and she said, oh, that's just, they call it quote unquote boy talk or like locker room talk. And I wanted to get your opinion on like just that term in general of locker room talk.
I think it would make me really sad if the men in my life were talking like that in the locker rooms, and I would feel very differently about the men in my life if I knew that that's what they were doing. So I think using that as an excuse is the lowest common denominator, because even if it's in private, those words and those thoughts have impact on society.
I also think that it's not just talk because they're talking about what they have done in the past. So you're um like you're talking about things that you've actually done to women or would like to. And I think that the fact that it was a woman who said, oh, it's just locker room talk, it's just boy talk, like shows that even women can uphold sexism as well.
Yeah, I definitely feel that because I know I've heard a lot of people kind of just say that term like locker room talk, or like they'll use the common thing like, oh, boys will be boys, you know, and I feel like that's just it. Like when people say that on like national television and just in any kind of media source, it definitely kind of perpetrates this idea that it's okay, like it's just some little side thing that people should kind of throw away because like it that's definitely in the norm. Well, now moving on, kind of to close our view. So we are talking about society, and now I want to bring it back to universities or just higher education. And I want to present to you this question: do you think the idea of fraternities and sororities in Greek life in itself kind of perpetrate some form of sexism by separating these people?
I think there's a lot of double standards that exist, and it's whether that's in in recruitment practices where women are held to a different standard as potential new members, and with the activities that they get to do to be recruited into a sorority, or the fact that sororities are not allowed to hold the dance parties that the fraternities are. I think there is a lot of double standards that um, kind of keep biases intact. But I want to also say that very, um, it's very humbling to see, especially at this university, that, you know, being a member of Greek life, we being members of Greek life, we are able to speak out about it and voice our opinions. And I'm of the opinion that you cannot be a productive member within any organization without being able to criticize it. Otherwise, you're just a blind follower in whatever organization. So I think with conversations like these and just spreading awareness about them, again, that holds us accountable and we can hopefully push for change in whichever ways. But I think absolutely there are so many double standards in Greek life just with logistics and rules and whatnot.
For me personally, I'm not in any sorority, so I can't speak too much about it, but I do see on campus, like during recruitment, how the processes are different, and I think it speaks to um, how each how men and women should behave in society. And then also just the fact that the fraternity and sorority are historically very binary, and how that's very exclusive of people with different gender identities.
All right. Thank you so much. That's really all the questions I have for now. Definitely, I want to thank both of you for coming out and having this conversation with us. Uh,
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
okay, so thank you everyone for coming. Join me in thanking these two ladies coming to have this very serious conversation with us. Thank you for watching. Make sure you show some support, check out our previous video, and stay tuned for our next video. Thank you.